I said this before in a previous video, but it's really stuck with me and it's really resonated with a lot of people too, is to love them out loud. I get this dog in my care, and all I have to do is show the world their funny quirks and their personalities and them sleeping on their back with their belly up and them like chomping at the hose, just doing funny, naughty, mischievous, whatever it may be. That's all I have to do. And people fall in love with these dogs. And I get this comment all the time, people saying, oh my God, how do you get the best fosters? I don't. If you foster, you will get the best foster too.
Hi, welcome to MythBarkers, where we make dog parenting easier by sniffing out the facts and debunking dog tales.
So we've talked a lot about adoption and rescue so far. Today we're going to go really deep into fostering, which is something obviously I'm very passionate about. I've talked about so far on a couple of episodes. You know, in the last 2 years, I've had a full house of fosters in addition to my resident rescues. And so I'm really excited about today's guest. If you're tuning into MythBarkers, you probably are already following today's guest on social, or you've seen her on the Dodo or the Wildest or somewhere else. But you know, Yenna, I'll let you do the honors and introduce our guest today.
So, Isabel, we met years ago in my apartment when Bodhi was still alive. And I just remember you had the most incredible energy and you had such a passionate love for dogs. And I remember that lightness about you and the vibe that you had with Bodhi. And I always thought you were really special for it. Since then, you have built your own social following. You've built an incredible brand. Tell us a little bit about how you started, whether there was a special dog that got you there.
Yeah. Hi. First of all, I'm very excited to be here.
Yay!
There honestly has been a lot of dogs that have contributed to my path. And you're probably expecting me to say that my dog Simon was, the one that got me into it, but it was actually my childhood dog Ruby. When I was 4 years old, I was dog obsessed. I would draw dogs in my kindergarten class obsessively. I pretended to be a dog. I would eat all my meals on the ground. I would walk on all fours. And my preschool teacher called my mom and she was like, this is getting weird. Like, I think that maybe you should get her a dog. Maybe this would help psychologically. I don't know. So, we went and got a little golden retriever puppy named Ruby, and she was my entire world. Truly my first love. I grew up with her. She died when I was 17, so she lived a very long, beautiful life. And really from the moment I entered the world, I was obsessed with dogs. Ruby was the first dog that I truly loved. And then my first job out of college was with a dog photographer, which is how I met you, Yena. And it just kind of like kickstarted this like real passion that I always kind of had, but I never really knew that I could have a career that was focused around it. And then I started fostering before I adopted my dog Simon. Simon was actually what we call a foster fail, which I'm sure we'll get into what that means. But I ended up adopting him. And since then, I have just kind of slowly, day by day, month by month, year by year, gotten more and more involved. And now fostering and caring for dogs is my full-time job, which is pretty crazy to say.
And so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's the dream life, honestly. And I love that you said, oh, I didn't know I could have a career around dogs, because I didn't know that either until I was like, you know what? I refuse to spend any time outside of my dog. Like this has to happen somehow.
I mean, I think people, obviously you can have a career surrounding dogs. Like you can be a vet or you can be a dog walker or a groomer. Like those things are very obvious, but I don't think I ever considered the fact that like I could do what I'm passionate about, which is writing and social media, and marry it with dogs. Like that was never, like, growing up, social media didn't exist. So you weren't like, this is my dream, is to do something like this. So to have like carved out this career path for myself is truly like I literally texted my fiance 5 minutes before this. I'm just like, I just feel like the luckiest person on the face of the planet. Like I feel so grateful that I get to do this every single day.
Absolutely.
How long have you been doing it? How long has it been on this journey?
So, well, I started working with dogs, my first job out of college, so 23. But I've been doing it completely on my own, like doing my own thing for, man, 2 years, which is kind of crazy.
That's a rapid
That's
growth, by the
awesome.
way. How
Yeah,
incredible.
Congratulations.
thank you. I know it's been a really crazy 2 years.
I love it. So, how would you say that Simon shaped you as a person?
Oh man, he has shaped me in so many ways and ways that I am continuing to learn. I adopted Simon when he was 3 months old, and it was probably the least responsible thing that I've ever done in my life because I was completely broke and 25 years old and had no idea what I was doing with my life. Um, and he was just so cute. I was just like, I just want this cute dog. Joke's on me because a month later he had a grand mal seizure and almost died. And
Mm.
turns out he has extremely complex idiopathic epilepsy. And it is extremely expensive. And I've spent tens of thousands of dollars over the years to care for him. There was a period where he was having seizures every single day.
Oh,
Um, and he's just shown me such unconditional love, have such patience because of him. And he's really made me fall in love with medical fosters. That's really what I'm drawn to. I always say that, like, when a dog comes to me that has no problems, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I love working with dogs that have medical problems, that need to heal, that need that patience and love.
Yeah.
He's really made me fall in love with that. And he's just made me fall in love with life in a way that I had never felt before. Every single day when I wake up to take him on a walk, I am so grateful that I'm there with him and that he's here with me. It's just the little things. He's so happy all the time. He just has such joy radiating out of him. And I think that's every dog, but especially a medical dog really teaches you to live in the moment and just appreciate those little things.
I think a lot of dog parents can relate to what you just said. Just that intangible feeling that only dogs can provide that gives you this sense of safety and like the sense of just joy. You just feel really joyful to be around them. Thank you for sharing that. And so, fostering is a crucial piece of the adoption process. The majority of animals rescued each year would not be lucky enough to make it to their forever homes if it's not for the generosity of the foster parents. How did you first get into fostering, and can you talk about your first experience?
Yes. So I started fostering. I wish I could say that it was out of the goodness of my heart and I wanted to like help a homeless dog, but it was just that I was obsessed with dogs and I didn't have enough money to have one of my own. And I heard about fostering and I'm like, this seems perfect because I can have a dog and have that companionship, but it's not permanent. The rescue pays for all of the expenses. It's like a perfect opportunity for a young person with no money. So my first foster dog was a dog named Marble, and he was insane. Like, he was a puppy. He was a cattle dog, Australian Shepherd mix, which you can only imagine. He was so neurotic. I remember taking him home on the subway and he was like latched onto my arm, not to bite, but to suck because he was so anxious and was like nursing on me. I had so many blankets that he just like got soaking wet because he always had to be sucking on something if he wasn't like on top of me. So it was just like a crazy experience. And after that, I was like, oh my God, that was so hard. Like, that was just not what I expected at all. The minute he got adopted, I was like, I need another one. Like, for me, it was just like an addicting thing. It was like, I needed that dog in my life. It was so hard. But for some reason, I just like felt the absence of him. And of course, I loved him. But it wasn't that I was like, oh, I wish I had adopted that dog. It was like, all right, I want to do the next one. Like, I want onto the next one, onto the next one. And that still is how it is for me. Like, even if I have a very particularly difficult foster dog, as soon as they're gone, I want the other one. Like, it is like such a fulfilling feeling for me. And I feel like it's just that thing that you don't know it until you do it. And then you see why people constantly, like you, Laura, have 6 dogs in their house.
So, as an adoption coordinator, I work with a lot of fosters, right? Because that's also part of what I do besides fostering myself, because I want to help more dogs. I'm always talking to fosters, and when they're brand new, it's like the first one is almost the hardest, right?
Yes.
Did you find that? Like that experience of, now that I've gotten attached to this dog, how can I give it up? And I have this discussion with them all the time, like, it's so hard. And it's like, but just it's going to feel so rewarding once you know that they're in their forever home and you were a
Mhm.
part of that. And then you could take in another one. So from the rescue side, I'm like, don't
I
foster
know.
fail, right? Let
A
that
lot
dog
of
go.
a lot of people adopt their first foster because it's so easy to fall in love with them. Like so many of these dogs are just so incredible and
Mm.
you get really attached, but I always say like try to hold out. I'm never going to shame somebody for adopting or foster failing, but try to hold out. It gets easier. The more you do it, the easier it gets. I always say too, people are always asking me how I do it and like how do I not get attached? I find that it's so much easier for me because I have Simon. I
Mm.
have my soul dog. I have my buddy who never leaves. So for me, it's easier to have this revolving door of other dogs because I still feel their absence, but I don't feel it as much because I have this dog who's like a permanent fixture in my life. So that's
Absolutely.
also, if people are willing to continue to foster when they still have a dog, I think that's like a great happy medium as well.
And Simon is so good at onboarding these fosters and making them feel comfortable in the home, showing them around. I
I
always
know.
love that moment because it's like you guys are a team and you're aligned in this mission, and he just gets it.
I really do feel like he understands it. I always say I couldn't do it without him. He's truly the best foster brother ever. And it's funny because, I mean, Simon's a wonderful dog, but he's like not the most patient. Um, I have so many funny videos of him online screaming at me because I'm like blowing up a blow up pool or I turn the fan on. And he's very particular, very opinionated. For whatever reason with fosters, he is so patient and he's so gentle and
Oh,
he's so like lets them do whatever they want, lets them sleep in his bed. He just like knows to take a step back. It helps that he's extremely independent, but he is just like the best companion and I really feel like he kind of teaches them like how to be a dog. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, and dogs can do that so much easier with other dogs
Yeah.
because they're the same species. They're like, this is where I go to get cozy. Check it out.
Yeah, and I also think that they go off of the vibes of like he's happy here and he trusts these people.
Mm.
So I think it helps them decompress much quicker than maybe they would if it was just like two strange humans in a home.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. So at MythBarkers, we're all about debunking myths and misconceptions about our canine companions, and we want to make pet parenting easier. And some believe that foster fail is a good thing, but those who work in the rescue space would say otherwise, or there's conflicting opinions. What do you think of this?
Like I said, I'm not ever going to shame somebody for adopting. I foster failed Simon, so I don't really have a leg to stand on to be like you can't do it. However, I will say that it's not the point of fostering.
Mm.
People think that the point of fostering is to adopt a dog or to like, you know, on social media you post, "Oh, this is my foster dog." Immediately 100 comments, "You have to adopt them. You have to adopt them. You have to adopt them." It drives me insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um of course, if you find a dog that you really feel a soul connection with, you should keep that dog if you want to keep that dog. However, it is not the point of fostering. The point of fostering is to be a soft place for this dog to land before they find their forever home.
Mm.
Fostering is
I
so
like that.
important. Also, I don't know, Laura, you might know this statistic, but there is a statistic that says if a person adopts, most likely they aren't going to continue fostering. Like they adopt and then that's it. So, of course, it's wonderful to adopt a dog, but you will help way more dogs if you don't adopt that dog and you act as kind of like a transition place until they find that perfect family.
Absolutely. Especially when you have a good foster who
Yeah.
learns what the process is like and they do such a great job. When those wonderful fosters do decide to foster fail, we're like, it's almost bittersweet. So I'm like, will you still foster? Like, will you still take more dogs? Because,
Yeah.
we can always find one home, but you're affecting so many other potential dogs. It's so hard to find fosters who want to do this now. And I think, actually, Anna and I were talking about this earlier. I don't know if you saw last year, Hill's Pet put out an interesting report about the state of shelter pet adoption. And they actually called out specific misperceptions about fostering that were so eye-opening to me.
Mm.
And it was something like 40% of prospective fosters are afraid of fostering because they think they're expected to adopt. And it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. We don't want you to adopt. We just want you to be that safe place for the dog to land and then help them get to their forever home. It's only
Yeah.
temporary. And I think the other eye-opening stat that they included was the expectations that prospective fosters think they're going to have to incur. You talked about it earlier.
Exactly.
Like, the good rescues, they're covering so many or all of the expenses. The fostering is like, you're doing such a service. You're a volunteer. We're not expecting you to keep the dog. We're not expecting you to cover the cost of the dog.
Yep.
You know?
I was literally just talking about this yesterday. I am working with Muddy Paws Rescue to do foster recruitment and retention. And we were talking yesterday about exactly that. And I think the fear that most people have, I get this comment all the time. Just today, I posted a video of my foster dog going to the vet, and everyone's like, how do you afford this? And I'm like, I don't. Like, they're paying all of his medical expenses. They're paying for his food. They're paying for everything. Of course, sometimes I'm like a little bit crazy and I'm like, I need to buy this little outfit for him and like do cute things, but that's like totally on me. I think most people are scared that they're going to be stuck with a dog, that they're just going to have to take a random dog and be stuck with it for 6 months, a year until this dog gets adopted. That is not true. For most rescues, you can say, hey, I'm available for these 2 weeks. I'm available for 1 weekend. Like, here's my availability and I can take a dog until then. Or leave it open-ended. I can take the dog until it gets adopted. But like, it is totally up to you as the foster to set your expectations. You can tell them, I want a dog under 25 pounds. You want a dog that is over 12 years old. There's so many things that you can specify. Like, I don't want puppies. I don't want a medical dog. They will find you a dog from the shelter that fits that criteria. And you don't have to pay a single dollar. I'm sure there are rescues out there that do expect fosters to pay for food and things like that, but the good ones will cover all of your expenses.
This is so crucial to let people know, because I think that is probably the biggest barrier to people trying out fostering, because they assume that they have to cover the medical expenses and the food and all of these things. So thank you for saying that. That's really, really great. And I love that there's also flexibility on what someone is able to do and is able to provide, and being transparent about that will pair you with the right dog in the right situation. So that's perfect.
Yeah, we call them like temp fosters, like temporary fosters. Temp fosters are so important because somebody like me who has a foster dog for 2 months, if I go away for a weekend, I need somebody to just take the dog for 2 nights. And if somebody works full time, travels a lot, they don't have the time. It's like a perfect match of like, I have the time to have the dog 24/7. This person doesn't, but this person can step up when I need them to and take the dog for 2 nights. So like, those people are just as important as I am. So the people that feel like they don't have enough time, their schedule is too busy, they travel too much, it is completely possible for you to foster as well.
That's amazing. I love that you're highlighting a bit of the ecosystem and how fosters work, because I actually didn't even know that there was a temp foster that just fosters for a couple of days to cover for more, permanent fosters.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Are there any others in this ecosystem that you think people would benefit from knowing?
This is not quite related, but I do think that there is a misconception about shelters versus rescues, and people don't realize that both are necessary. Like, I mean, I could get into the whole kill shelter, no kill shelter. I won't, because
that's another episode. That's a whole other episode.
Or your post on that. I thought it was so interesting.
That should be a whole episode, because it's just,
we'll have you back for that. Yes.
Yeah, it's just
Thanks
like
for the intro to the next one.
It is the craziest like misconception, but let's give a New York City example. The ACC, the Animal Care Centers of New York City, is an open intake shelter, meaning they take every single dog that comes to their doorstep. They take in, medical cases, strays, criminal cases, you name it. Then a rescue will pull dogs from the open intake shelter and pull them into their rescue. So people say like, oh, again, misconception, like, shut down the ACC, like shut down municipal shelters. This rescue is doing the right thing. A rescue can't exist without a shelter. So just because you don't like the way that shelter is run, where else are those dogs going to go? Like, there's no other place for those dogs to go. So it kind of goes, a dog comes in for whatever reason, goes to the shelter, then goes to a rescue, then goes to a foster, then goes to a forever home. So it's like this whole process, and you can't really have one without the other.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big misconception of people and the way that rescue works in general.
That's a really important one.
Can I dig in a little bit even deeper? Then think about, just because we're advocates here and we want to open people's eyes, and I think use MythBarkers as a way to evangelize people to get involved. Think about also the shelter volunteers. If you can't foster, maybe consider volunteering, right? There's people
Absolutely.
who come in and take care of those dogs. I know some rescues who just have transport volunteers
Yep.
that help from one place to the other, or take a dog to a doctor's appointment. They can't foster, but there's so many opportunities, and none of these rescues and shelters would be able to operate without hundreds and hundreds of people giving their time. So it's just another thing to think about if you're not ready to foster, although we would all say, give it a try.
Yeah.
Because you never know. You know, you could love the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also you can get creative with it, as you're saying. Like if you have a car, you can take a dog to a doctor's appointment. But also, I love the ACC. I try my hardest to advocate for them always. They, with good reason, have very strict fostering rules where you have to like isolate a dog for 2 weeks, keep it separate from dogs. Obviously, I live in a studio apartment. Like that's not possible for me, but I'm being trained as a volunteer to go in and walk dogs. And I make sure that all of my foster dogs from Muddy Paws are pulled from the ACC. So you can get creative about it. Like my living situation does not allow me to foster through the ACC. You can work with rescues to pull from the ACC to then help them out in different ways. You can go walk dogs. You know, most shelters have a doggy field trip, doggy day out where you can go and take a dog for the day and go on a hike or go to the beach. So there's a million ways that you can help. You can go and clean kennels. So yes, I totally agree. There are a million ways to help, a million ways to get creative. If fostering does not fit with your living situation or your dog is not dog friendly, there's always a way to help.
How did you first get involved with the ACC?
So I got involved with the ACC through my last job. We would go visit shelters and feature adoptable dogs. And I love New York City so much. Like I am like such a New Yorker. And just through my experience with animal rescue, I've just learned more and more. My dog is a rescue from Korea, as is Yenna's dog.
Korean Canine
Yeah.
Rescue.
And I am eternally grateful for them for bringing him to me. However, the more that I have learned, the more I believe that like there is such a dog crisis in our own backyard. And I think it's so important to help here. I'm not trying to say one is more important than the other, but there is a crisis happening right now, right here in our backyard. And I don't want to turn a blind eye to it. And I do think that there is such a misconception about municipal shelters and open intake shelters and kill shelters that I love to use my platform to advocate for them. And I think they do a really good job. They get a lot of criticism. I think it's a really hard job. I cannot imagine being a full-time ACC employee. I think they do a lot of great work and it's a really thankless job. So everything that I can do to help them, I think is worth it.
I actually first learned about all of the things that the ACC does, like the fact that they take in every animal that is brought in from your account. That was the first time I actually ever heard of it. So this parlays us to the next question. You are so incredible at using your social media and your voice and your platform to help these organizations and help these rescues. What has been the most effective in storytelling this? Like, what has really worked?
That's a great question. I think it's really simple, to be honest. I don't think I'm doing anything revolutionary or unique necessarily. I think that what I try to do is just, like you said at the beginning of this episode, I just try to show the process as plainly as I can. And I think just showing the dog, to quote myself, I said this before in a previous video, but it's really stuck with me and it's really resonated with a lot of people too, is to love them out loud, which is like, I get this dog in my care and all I have to do is show the world their funny quirks and their personalities and them sleeping on their back with their belly up and them like chomping at the hose, like just doing like funny, naughty, mischievous, whatever it may be, like their funny quirks. That's all I have to do. And people fall in love with these dogs. And I get this comment all the time, people saying, oh my God, how do you get the best fosters? I don't. If you foster, you will get the best foster too. Like it just goes to show that dogs are just incredible. They all have their own unique, funny personalities. All you have to do is show it and love them out loud, and people will come and gather and appreciate it. So I really don't think what I'm doing is like super creative. I just think that I'm kind of like showing up and showing the process. And I think it resonates with people.
I think that's exactly it. You are just being yourself. And you mentioned you were that dog loving person ever since you were born. So that energy just comes through the camera. And I think that's part of loving dogs. You observe their quirks and their little habits and the strange little things that they do. And when you appreciate it loudly, openly, like you said, other people are able to see it so much quicker, and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I see what that makes that dog so special." Oh, that's great.
But that's what the beauty of fostering is, right? Is I know exactly what you're talking about, because you're giving the dogs the chance to feel comfortable and to become their full selves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that transition, that evolution from when a dog is in a shelter, it is an incredibly stressful and scary environment. They are not acting their full selves. There's so many dogs that will show their teeth or growl in a steel, concrete, small, loud kennel. You bring it into a home, you show it love, you give it the time to decompress, you take care of it, you feed it, they become their full selves, they bloom, and you're like, this is the dog that you could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty.
There's a study that if a dog spends even 24 hours outside of a shelter in a foster home, they are 14 times more likely to get adopted because of exactly that. If you pass by a dog in a kennel, you're not seeing anything. You're purely basing your opinion of this dog on how they look. But my favorite example is my foster dog, Poutine, who literally broke the internet. She's like a complete star. But I was walking through the hallways of the ACC. They had a million pop-up kennels because they were over capacity at all times. And I just lifted a sheet, and there's this little bully mix, and she was so broken down, like literally the saddest dog I've ever seen in my entire life, just like so broken down, could barely walk, so sick. And I was like, I need this dog. So like 2 hours later, they delivered her to my doorstep, and her just mental and emotional transformation was so incredible. She went from this dog that would barely even lift her head to look me in the eye to being so naughty and ripping vines off in our backyard. She was so crazy and silly in the best way. And I think her mom has like 40,000 followers on Instagram and TikTok. Like the world fell in love with her. She went completely viral. I think she's getting like brand deals, as she should. And yeah, it was just like somebody hadn't taken a chance on that dog. She probably would have been overlooked for God knows how long. And it turns out that she's like this absolutely amazing dog. And that can be said for so many dogs in the shelter.
The glow up, that was amazing to watch and to follow. And now that photo shoot that I saw that the Ways of the
With her
Dog
pearls.
recently did, oh my God.
She
made
is.
it.
I know. And she lives on the beach. I'm like, can I get adopted? By you too?
That's amazing. And you had a huge
made that
part in
happen.
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really rewarding.
It's so rewarding, but that is my point, is she was such an easy dog. I just like saw her, I was like, you're coming home with me. And all I had to do was give her a place to sleep. And then she's like, 2 months later, a completely different dog. So of course there is like emotional and physical labor that goes into it, but so many of these dogs are just so grateful and loving and easy, to be quite honest. Poutine was one of them. That was just like such a joy to be around and witness that glow up.
Man, I'm thinking about all these chapters in your life with these foster dogs. And, for me, whenever I have a photo shoot with my dogs, it's a permanent memory ingrained in my brain. And I'm imagining all of these fosters that have gone through your home. They must have like a special gallery in your mind. And what great memories to hold, each of them.
Yeah, I remember them all so vividly. Actually, last night I was on a date with my fiance, and I was like, I bet I could rattle off every single foster that I've had in chronological order. And I did it. He was like, oh my God, that was like really impressive. I'm like, I am like so connected to these dogs. Like I remember all of them, even if they were only in my care for a week. They really make a lasting impact on you.
They change your lives. They really do.
Absolutely.
So I've always wanted to foster, but Luke is a little bit reactive, and we're working
Spicy.
on that. Yes, he's a little spicy. So I've been working on that. There have been a few incidents with him and Bodhi as well. And I've worked with several dog behaviorists and all of that. Do you have any experience or recommendations for people who have adopted? They have a slightly spicy dog, but they also want to foster?
Actually, it's funny that you asked this question because one of my really good friends, Alexa, she's also a content creator. Her handle is Telling Our Tales, Tails.
Okay.
She has a spicy dog named Joni. She's adorable. She wanted to get into fostering, so Muddy Paws worked with her to find a literal decrepit, like 12-year-old Yorkie who is like really tiny and really old. I think that a senior dog, depending on if your dog has prey drive, maybe a small dog is not the best option, but I think a senior dog is such a great step into fostering because they are so easygoing. Another misconception, a lot of people think senior fosters are just difficult. They are so easy. And long story short, she got this foster and her dog was totally fine. She,
Wow.
had Joni in the crate when the dog came in, then put the dog in the crate and had Joni sniff her, had them get used to each other. I think she's still, switching which dog is in the crate just to get them used to each other. But Joni has had like zero reaction,
Amazing.
which is so great.
Yeah.
So I think starting small, also saying like, hey, I can only do it for 2 nights. Temp fostering is a great option for people in
I
that
love that.
position. Just seeing how it goes. So you're not like stuck with this dog if it goes poorly. But yeah, I always say like if you have a dog that you're not sure about, you don't want to get a little puppy who's going to be annoying and barking and in your dog's face and not respecting their boundaries. That is like the worst possible thing to do. Although I think some dogs find puppies less intimidating, but I always say go senior first and then you can work your way up to the more difficult dogs.
Yeah, because senior dogs have this like really chill energy. They're just very, very
Yeah, they're
zen.
just like mind their business.
Exactly. This is amazing advice. I'm very inspired, and I want to try it.
I'll get you set up with Muddy Paws.
Please, this is very exciting.
I have so many thoughts about the relationships with the foster dog and the resident dogs because that's something I think we don't talk about enough. And it seems like Muddy Paws does such an amazing job of taking into account what type of dog you have
They do.
and making sure it's a good fit. And that's something that is very important, I think, for fosters in general, is making sure that the dogs are a good fit and also to know that not all dogs are going to get along and they're not going to be best friends on
Yeah.
day one. There should be an integration process. And
Yeah.
Yenna, just like how you had when you got Bodhi and then Luke, like doing things the right way, to quote Jamie Iannello, a trainer friend that we had, it's like slow is fast. Doing things slowly and
Yes.
taking time and giving space. There's this instant gratification of social media, right? People think everything is
Yeah.
perfect immediately. And we know doing the hard work, that's not always the case. And so just taking a moment to go, okay, let's make sure it's the right fit. Let's do things the right way. Don't expect perfection on day one. And I
Yeah.
think that's usually how
Absolutely.
I guide people. Because I've had people who bring in dogs. And the first time I had fosters, I brought a foster into my house. My resident dogs, they're like, what is this? You know?
Mhm.
And then you
Well,
learn,
I think that can be said. I think it's so true with integrating a foster dog with your resident dog, but it can be said across all of rescue where people talk about the 3-3-3 rule of like decompression. I have heard the worst possible stories of somebody adopting a dog and then 12 hours later returning the dog and being like, this dog is crazy. And it's like in the first 12 hours of a dog in a new place, like what do you expect? Like give him time. It's just ridiculous to expect a dog to immediately be comfortable with you and immediately feel at ease. I also saw a video of a girl who is fostering a dog on TikTok, and she was sobbing because she had had this dog for, I think, 24 hours. And she was like, the dog won't come out of the crate. The dog hasn't gone to the bathroom. The dog hasn't eaten anything. Like, is he going to die? Is he going to be okay? And I commented and I'm like, I completely understand. It's scary if this is the first time that you're experiencing this. Dogs can go a shockingly long time without going to the bathroom, leaving their crate, eating. Give him space and he will do it in his own time. Like, just because in our human emotion feel that like you want him to like cuddle up with you and feel comfortable, it's not reality. Having that patience and giving the dog time and just allowing the dog to do things on their own time, I think is so important.
You
Yeah.
said my favorite thing, the 3-3-3 rule. Can you share what that is so for some of our followers and listeners who don't know?
Yes. And I also feel like it's kind of a tongue twister. So the 3-3-3 rule is decompression period for a dog in a new place. So a foster dog or a dog that you're adopting. So it's 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. I'm sure there's a million different timetables for like what you can expect, but it's essentially just that after 3 days, you'll see kind of like a significant shift in the decompression period. After 3 weeks, even more. And after 3 months, the dog will most likely be fully decompressed from the transition. Of course, every dog is different. So you'll get a dog who's immediately comfortable with you and immediately wants to like live in your skin and just like feels totally normal. And then there's a dog who will take 6 months to a year to feel their normal self. So, but it is a very good rule of thumb to remember that dog's decompression happens over time and to give that dog time to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I love that because it kind of sets the right expectation for people to not expect their dog to be completely comfortable in 24 hours
Yeah.
or 48 hours. These are unrealistic expectations of humans and of dogs. So I love that rule. Isabel, you've worked with a lot of rescues. Is there anything that you wish was different about the rescue space?
A lot. Yeah. I think.
What is the biggest pain point that we could all potentially maybe solve together?
Well, I talked about the misconception of open intake shelters, so I'll choose a different one. That's usually like the hill that I'll die on, but I already died on that hill. So I actually recently made a video about open adoption, and that is something that Muddy Paws practices. You'd think that I work for Muddy Paws, by the way. I think that they do things so well. I am constantly impressed by the way that they handle adoptions and fostering and just the systems that they have in place. I think they're an extremely ethical rescue. They practice something called open adoption. So instead of applying for a certain dog, you register to become an adopter. Once you're an adopter within the system, you can essentially register to adopt any dog. Of course, it's within reason. They're going to try to match you as best as possible, but it is, for the most part, first come, first serve, which I think a lot of people are kind of like scandalized by. They're like, oh my God, but how do you make sure that it's like the best fit? People have opinions. You shouldn't have a dog in a New York City apartment. You shouldn't have a dog that doesn't have a fenced in backyard. But when you start to pick and choose like who is the best adopter for a dog, it gets dicey very quickly because what happens most of the time is the rescue chooses a straight white couple who lives in the suburbs and has a fenced in backyard. That excludes so many people. It excludes single people. It excludes people of color. It excludes people who can't afford to buy a home.
Right.
Does that mean that those people are going to be bad dog owners? Of course not. And this might be a hot take. I find that people who live in the suburbs are not the best dog owners because they just let their dog in the fenced in backyard and call it a day and don't take their dogs on walks or don't give their dog enrichment or whatever it might be. So I think that adoption should be much more accessible to people. I don't think that you should have to make a certain amount of money to have a dog. I don't think that you have to feed your dog the fanciest food. I don't think that you should have to own a home to have a dog. And I think a lot of rescues are very biased about that.
That's a really interesting point. I wonder how we can combat this because it feels like a lot of the changes that need to be made would have to do with the process. So maybe the vetting would be different. Certain information might be excluded from the vetting process. But it's like you said, it's very dicey because you want a nice balance between finding the right fit for the dogs. But again, it feels really unfair to give that opportunity to just a select subset of people.
In my experience, a lot of dogs, I would say most dogs in the shelter system, rescue system, would do well in a lot of different environments.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to like say that every dog needs a fenced-in backyard in the suburbs. It's just not true. In fact, I think Simon would be bored in the suburbs. Simon is such a city dog. He loves going to the park every morning. He loves seeing his friends. He loves the like busy bustle of like going places. And so yeah, I think just like giving people an opportunity to try. And everybody always says, well, what about people who return their dogs because they had to move and their landlord didn't? It's like, oh, what if? We have to trust people more, I think. And dogs get returned for a million different reasons. They get returned because the owner got cancer. They got returned because the owner had children. They got returned because the dog didn't get along with the resident dog. Like, there's so many reasons. If we keep going into the what ifs, no one would adopt a dog.
Yeah.
I don't think it's up to us to try and see into the future of what could the potential outcome of this be and just try and trust people to do the right thing. I was a broke 25-year-old girl who lived in a 3-story walk-up in Brooklyn. Nobody should have given me a dog. They trusted me and they gave me a dog, and I feel that I have given Simon the absolute best life possible. He has such an enriching life. I think I've given him the best medical care possible. They trusted me to give him a good life, and I think I have fulfilled that.
Yeah.
And I would like to give other people the same opportunity to step up to the plate and do the right thing, because I think more times than not, people will.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Isabel, you've shared so much information and shed so much light on what the fostering experience is like, and I really hope that it hits home for some people and they maybe sign up to foster or look into it. I think that would just be such a wonderful thing to come from this.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that, Isabel? Because I know you have a book coming.
Oh, well,
let's talk about the book.
I have a book coming up. It's called Dogs, Boys, and Other Things I've Cried About.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. This feels like a recap of my life.
Right? I'm like,
yes.
That's like so relatable for so many of us women.
And in Brooklyn too.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, the city. Yes.
Exactly.
I cannot wait to read it, Isabel. It's going to be so good because I really love your writing.
Thank you. I'm so excited. My first draft is due. It's slowly approaching, but it is interesting because social media, as you said, is such a quick, like fast-paced thing, and this is such a slow process. It's a totally different beast, and it's fascinating. So like being really slow and thoughtful about it I'm like exercising a different part of my brain. It's gonna come out spring of 2026, so about a year from now. So we're very excited. It's been a long and incredible process, and truly my greatest dream. So I feel extremely lucky to be able to publish a book.
Wow. I love this. Thank you so much for joining us today, Isabel. And we look forward to having you on again to discuss the ACC
or the book.
Yes, that's such a great idea. Oh, I love that.
Thank you so much for everyone who's been listening and following along. You can follow along with Isabel and Simon Sits on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next episode of MythBarkers.